But sir, this is not a situation, isolated situation when we talk about the international geopolitics and geoeconomics. There has been talk about this present tariff war, and since uh, President Trump has taken over administration in the U.S., and now there is a talking, going talk about U.S.-China uh, tariff war. As a market regulator, as a market observer, and you are one of the few people in India who have been associated with the uh, stock market since its inception almost. So, how do you see this uh, uh, entire tariff war unfolding? Do you see we are entering into more area of protections? And how should investor look at this entire scenario?
The way I look at us, also look at history. What happened and where similar situations arising, say in the immediate past or distant past, and why they happened, what happened then. So if you look back post World War II, there was the Bretton Woods system and World Bank, IMF, the national reserve banks or federal reserves across the world. And it was a framework that came out of a Bretton Woods, right? And
Then there was a general agreement on trade and tariff, and that.
and yeah, that came much later. But basically, for me, the way I look at it is, America was not the number one till World War II. It became world number one immediately after World War II because it was preparing itself from 1920s and 1930s. It was preparing itself. It had a much larger area, but it was also including many people coming from across Europe and various other places. And it was like a melting pot, and which created many new inventions, including, of course, atom bomb, which decisively closed the World War II. And that preparation, but also the upside which people were seeing in US in those days in 1944, 1945, uh, that this country has now taken the leadership. And that is for me was a decisive factor. Before that, British pound sterling was the
Yeah.
reserve currency.
Hmm.
Uh, and so you can see
Switch
that
over
was the
dollar.
switch over to dollars, and it was still gold backed. And then immediately post World War II, they took up two projects. One was revival of Germany, which in a way Europe took as a part of them, uh, and they wanted to rebuild it. And similarly,
Japan.
out of guilt, because of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, they had to do it for Japan. And so both the countries were allowed better terms, freer access, more than freer access to the Western world, and that's how they came about. And if you see, neither Germany nor Japan had military
Hmm.
because Germany was under NATO, which is again under US. Japan is the fully outsourced security to US. So effectively, they were not security threats to US. But when Japan specifically started coming up, because they are in a way different race, right? Whereas Germany is more of the same. Right?
Anglo-Saxon.
And so if you look at Japan, 1980s, it started building up that you need to bring down Japan's sort of production industrialization because they're exporting too much. And so new tariffs and new other things were created. And till now, after I think 1985 or 1986 was the highest level of Nikkei index, which probably till now has not been reached. In fact, 60-70% is still going on after 40 years.
Absolutely.
So you can see how whenever a new power tries to come up, the other competing powers, however sympathetic they may have to, they would have been to that particular society's cause, they start feeling threatened, and that's where the reaction comes. But even then, in 1945, 1972, when the gold backing was taken over, same time, there was a Cold War going. And um, China was a very secluded country. It did not talk to nobody except Russia. And America and Europe were trying to bring out China from the orbits of Russia. And so their handmaiden was Pakistan. Pakistan was basically making deals with various European powers and also US. And that's how they got even Simla Accord done in their favor.
CENTO was signed 53 itself, and then 71 basically the Kissinger diplomacy that
So,
changed everything.
For me, 71 Kissinger was landed in Pakistan, sent to China. He met Mao Zedong, came back, and then next year, I think 71 or 72, Nixon went. But it was basically then that they decided to now bring up China and give them many more benefits so that the communism is broken. The project of bringing China out and sort of isolating Russia or USSR those days, which was almost literally up to the Germany, Eastern Germany. So it was a very large place, but not very productive. So they succeeded in 1988. The Berlin Wall fell, and 1991 Perestroika and Glasnost. And so for me, that project was what created what is currently the China's and the West's relationship. West was the materially more advanced economy. China was a 2,000-year-old inward-looking situation, and they were very humiliated, like Japanese were during Nagasaki, Hiroshima, but even before that. And so they were trying to see how to learn those science and those technologies. And similarly, China said that the Opium War they lost against Britishers is because they were not good at science, and these guys had moved ahead of them. And that is true with India, but we didn't think it as one society, which we still sometimes or most times don't do. But those guys are like 2,000 years of homogeneity. They wanted to not compete. They first wanted to cooperate, keep their ideas hidden, their intentions hidden. And they are a military power, unlike Japan or Germany. And that's where over last, literally, although 1972 it started, but broadly 1980s onwards, Deng Xiaoping times, it's started coming up. And now in 45 years, the Japanese companies have invested in China, European companies have invested, even American companies have invested in China. Today, China, if you look at any estimate, somewhere between 35 to 40% of all industrial production of the world now happens in China. And that means that whatever we did over last 40 years as India also to improve our industrialization, it could not have succeeded because China was doing whatever it took and the rest of the world was also supporting it. India would have many qualitative and quantitative
Americans had this logic, no, that as happened in the case of USSR, if economy is liberalized, it will automatically lead to political democracy. That was the American logic.
For me, I look at it this way, that geopolitics eats economics for breakfast. You need to basically worry about geopolitics first, because society is more important than the economics. For me, economy or even finance is like, finance literally is like blood in the body. On its own, it's a red liquid. Only when it's in the body, it is useful to the body. But if it becomes on its own, then it has no relevance. It's just a red liquid with no life, right? And so that is where basically somewhere now the things have boiled over same 40 years period. Now, in a way, America, which post World War II, that is basically around 75, 77 years or 80 years in that matter, basically was the number one, very rich country, very productive, giving out doles, giving out even equipments, machinery to whoever, wherever somebody wanted, they could take wars and Nobody could take cudgels with them. But other people took advantage of them. They created WTO, they created UN, they created WHO. They were like large-hearted people in a way, conceptually. They allowed people to also they tied their hands and legs also and mouth also, but still they allowed saying, okay, in the interest of everyone, let us go. Our money, our equipments, our everything, but still we will also be bound by whatever you guys say. And in the process, over last 80 years, but last 40 years specifically, they have started feeling very poor. And that's where today, that 1988 onwards, world was what I call unipolar. Now, that unipolarity is going to come down is because the richest and the most powerful is now feeling weaker and less rich. And so it is feeling poorer. And now every time you ask them for a favor, they're asking, what will you do for me in return? And most of the countries in the Committee of Nations are saying, no, that was our birthright to leech on you. And it was your duty, solemn duty to give us whatever we wanted. And it is unfair and you are really sort of bad about it. And for me, it's not Donald Trump. See, I look at it, the history in a different way. That societies evolve as a function of variety of things, the groups, technology, but technology is a larger change which comes. And so in each society, there comes a time when the ideas have to change. And so you look at Narendra Modi's election in 2014. For me, if or Margaret Thatcher in UK or Ronald Reagan and many other places, even Mahatma Gandhi for that matter, they are representations of their people's aspirations and worries. Not only aspirations, worries, and an amalgam of many things which that society is going through. And so if Donald Trump had not come, somebody similar would have come. If he had not come this year, somebody else would have come 4 years hence. So because the society has come to a level where it is feeling frustrated. Large part of middle America has no jobs. When they lost jobs initially in 80s, when they started passing on the jobs to China or before that to Japan, they were told, no, it's for the greater good of humanity. And anyway, we are taking care of you using social security. So sit home and do nothing, right? But today, the situation is that $35 trillion or $36 trillion of national debt US has. On top of that, probably $100 trillion of unrealized liabilities on social security and health.
Almost 133% of their GDP.
That is $36 trillion only. But that is what is realized. What is unrealized is the health care.
Yes. The guarantees
because above 65, they give free health care. And also the social security. So yesterday, I was looking at the numbers. Broadly speaking, I think 25-26% goes in the medical related areas of their budget. And similar amounts go into social security. So 50% of their budget currently is just, if you bring forward those liabilities of all people alive and there, it could be, as per estimates, it's almost $100 trillion. So effectively that country, to satisfy or assuage the feeling of working people that their jobs are going, they created a social security, which has now become unmanageable because the country has stopped growing that much. If they were growing, the additional liabilities were easy to handle, which is what they were doing. When your country becomes older, it's not able to produce. But when the country also loses its industrial economy, when the country is not able to have that type of demand, it starts feeling poorer. And that's why for me, the current tariff framework is just an outcome of many tectonic plates that shift underneath. This, like how India got created, is again pushing that plate, and Himalayas are manifest out of those things, right? And so similarly, the society is tectonic plates within the society also, but outside also are shifting every day, every moment. And then some such events happen where you think, oh, this was unexpected. It was not, because life,
some movements were already happening.
and that is where for me now, when you look forward, in India's case specifically, post independence. We were quasi-socialist. We were wanting to be socialist, but not able to become socialist, and wanted to have independence, which anyway kept us out of uh, the orbit of Russia. But also, literally, we were on the wrong side of history. And that's where today, first time, when this polarities are changing, the new world economy is going to create it. Economic framework is, what are they calling?
Order.
Plaza Accord 2 is being talked about. It's basically the world is going to go through many changes. It is possible you will have two not so highly segregated like Russia, USSR versus the Europe and West. But broadly, you will have some amount of delinking of China from rest of the world, not only because of the economic part, but also because of their aggressive uh, military posturing, right? Not only with India, because we think it is only with India, but it's also with Philippines. Yesterday, they took over some island which was disputed from Philippines, and very many. At the same time, they have money and they have also ensured a lot
No,
more
it's true
countries.
with Maldives. It is true with many African countries where they are using even debt
Did
to
the
create a military,
But for me, that's where you will have to see that America, which was very rich in 1970s or 1988, today it is not so rich. At least it is feeling poor. It may be rich, but it is feeling poor. And the other side, there is an ascendant China, which is actually descending because their demographics suddenly worsened because of one-child policy. And so, uh, I think 2015 was the first time where lesser number of workers came to the job market compared to 2014. And 2024 was the first year where they started having number of people less than the previous year. And for me, that demographics actually determines a lot of economics, because the younger people ask for more material, more newer things, and that's where the demand comes from. And they also produce more because the younger people produce more. And that's where basically the technology, demand, demographics, all three are not in favor of China. So their current aggression, in a way, is while they are actually going down in their economics. And their economics was basically about purely exports and infrastructure.
Right.
Infrastructure has been created way beyond actually their requirement. And that's where their internal balance sheet is almost just the banking system size is 350 to 400% of their economy size. And unlike US, they don't borrow from outside. US is also similar size of banking system vis-a-vis their GDP. India, on the other side, has a banking system which is 60% of its GDP. So it's almost 7 times less leveraged compared to the China, because that also tells you that they have created that infrastructure with very little productivity.
Right.
So capital output ratio, incremental capital output ratio in China is very large now, because you put in a lot of capital, incremental outputs don't come. And that's where basically there are many issues they have. On the other side, if you look at Europe, it has become very left-leaning. And so the ideological differences between US and Europe is not about economics. It's about personality, because one is right-wing, other is left-wing, right? And so that may create some interesting plays. But overall, both are similar cultures, same cultures, similar mindsets, similar countries. And they are going to basically have an interesting play where now multipolarity is going to come into play. And India now is pretty much, as we are talking, yesterday I saw some numbers, India has now become the 4th largest economy as per the numbers that person had given. And so India will also be at the table. In 1947 or 1945, we were under British. When the Bretton Woods happened, our economists had gone, but as a British subject. 1972, we were not on the table. 1988, 91, we were not on the table. Today, we are going to be on the table. And largely, again, why we have come where we have come is because of the way we have handled our society. It's also because of the technology inculcation which has happened, and the demographics which is creating demand, and of course ability to produce. So those are the things where India has actually a great opportunity today. And I think 1,000 years when technology race was run, India was not even in the stadium or even 10 kilometers away. We were the pioneers of technologies 2,000 years back, 1,500 years back. But suddenly we became inward looking. We were more interested in managing our hierarchy, which many times I feel even now we are interested in that rather than evolving as a sort of a more material society.
External aggressions and intervention also pushed us to
But
some extent.
why, if we were scientific, we could have actually, if we had involved ourselves well on science and technology and evolving to attack those people back, then it would not have happened. It's just that we became too inward looking, and then it kept on sort of building on that. But 1,000 years, we were not in the race of the technology. Today, first time when technology race is being run, we are at the head table. And that is what many people tell me, that we have not developed our AI foundational models and all. And I say, did we develop Unix? Did we develop Pascal or COBOL or Fortran or Python? But we are the largest users. We run the world using those technologies sitting here, right? So we are the smartest people today. Why? Is because the society has become technology oriented. And why? Because we have young people. And young people learn newer things, and they
They'll adapt to the technology faster.
right? And that's where basically India has in the right spot, very sweet spot, and we should be able to take advantage. And I have no doubt this is pretty much the best administration I have seen in my working life, which is acutely aware of the constraints which we work in, but also the opportunities, and they are willing to work hard, whatever it takes, put their points of view forward on every issue, and still maintain that dignified framework, which is India's point alone. Right? And for me, I think it is being well appreciated across the world that this is a country which is not aggressive, which is extremely supportive of everything, which is positive, and also very, very tech savvy. And our diaspora also has helped. Let me tell you, we may think about brain drain and all, but our diaspora has created that image of India, which is way, way different vis-a-vis, say, what we used to have.
Sir, I remember, sorry to interrupt, but I remember because that time I was interacting with many of the diaspora people when post-Pokhran, we came up with those bonds, and suddenly people came out and, they were so proud, and they were so that we could do this. And then they reinvested almost in India, and we could, meet all those challenges related to sanctions thanks to our diaspora.
And for me, even their behavior, they are the ideal
Ambassadors.
An ideal minority in any country they stay in. I think it is a credit to India that we have created that law-abiding framework, which is high-tech, which is productive, which is positive, and every Indian today is carrying that hope